Hello, everybody, and as you can see, I'm nicely womaned up. Got my nails done early, even though I'm not very good at doing my nails still. So this is going to be a little video response to Alex J. O'Connor, aka the Cosmic Skeptic on YouTube, on his video regarding free will and why he doesn't believe that freedom of will exists, and why I do believe that freedom of will exists. I do not believe that the possibility for free will to be, or I don't believe that free will is negated by the existence of determinism as a possibility. I believe that there exist many examples in life where we observe people whose freedom of will is limited to one extent or another, or in one way or another. Crucial examples being drawn from examples of people who lack mental capacity in one way or another, or who are addicts, for instance. Say smokers, their freedom of will is limited to an extent. I am a smoker, so I have first-hand experience of this. I'm also a compatibilist, which means I believe that over his hard determinist perspective, that the freedom of will is compatible with determinism. So I agree that probably the best place to start with this debate is with defining terms and defining what the will is. So I read in the dictionary that the will is the faculty within us which decides upon and initiates action. So it's also subdefined, I think, as the faculty within us which desires or intends for certain outcomes. So in a sense, the will is actually something that's absolutely free. We can desire, wish, and intend for whatever we want in life. I can desire to have a toilet made out of solid gold. And via this, we come to this sort of argument from The Secret, about the power of intention and so on and so forth, and manifesting positive things that you want in your life and all this sort of stuff. Can you imagine what the world would be like if that were the case, if everybody just went around getting what they want all the time? Obviously, that doesn't happen for real. So I don't believe in secrets or anything like that. However, in spite of not being able to get it, we're free to wish for a toilet made out of solid gold as much as we like. That's the thing. We can wish for whatever we want to happen. It actually doesn't impact the chances of it happening at all. So, yes, while our will is free in an absolute sense, I feel we lack freedom of being able to act as we please. Do you know what I mean? So I think that the freedom of action is a little bit different to the freedom of will. The will is a little more abstracted, I feel, and a little bit more purely psychic or psychological in nature, very much of the mind, while our freedom of action is obviously restrained by the laws of physics. We may not levitate up into the air. I may not levitate things with my hands like a Jedi might or anything like that. However much I will for that, you can will to, say, levitate these objects in front of me as much as I please. It's not going to make it happen. It's not going to turn me into a Jedi. So that's sort of what I mean by the freedom of action being restrained, and I think is a good distinction to draw. And I think the way the will may be defined is a little bit more I think there's a little bit more depth to it than saying it's merely the ability to have acted otherwise. I think that also pertains more to the freedom of action, and actually in a lot of cases in the real world, he gives the example of choosing between chocolates and vanilla ice cream. I suppose that's only really relevant when you're given a choice between chocolate and vanilla. If you were to choose, say, a more real world example, say you're walking into an ice cream parlor, you're presented with maybe the desire to have something you've had before that you know that you like, or the desire to be more experimental. Say you're walking into Shakeaway and you're trying to choose a milkshake, and you've got this huge array of flavors that you can have for your milkshake, and you've got to or assemble your own combination of flavors, and you've got to choose between this huge number of ingredients. It's a little bit. What you do is you do enter into something I think of an indeterminate process. You enter into this process of decision making and deliberating between different alternatives that you can have in Shakeaway, for instance. Or if you're choosing on a menu, and this is the classic thing of, if you're sitting across from the person who ordered the thing that you were deliberating over having, and you just played it safe eventually and went for something that you like, and what they ended up getting looked fantastic and you wish you'd ordered it. That's the classic scenario, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, you're given time to deliberate. You were given a full description of the options, and for whatever reason in your process of indeterminate deliberation, you ended up going for the thing that you'd had before that that you like, and the other person got the thing that you wish you had. So it's sort of tough tits, really, isn't it? I mean, the waiters have to come and take your order at some point, so you've got this amount of time to choose, and, well, you played it safe. So still, I mean, they might well be happy with what they had, but, they wish they'd gone for the other thing and been a bit more adventurous, possibly. And when it comes to addiction, also, I'm going to start smoking now, because I actually can't restrain the ability to reach for my tobacco and light up a cigarette, or roll up a cigarette and light it for a long enough amount of time for me to be able to eventually quit nicotine or quit smoking, which is about 3 weeks. And, the cravings eventually will overpower me, and I will give in, and I'll have a cigarette. So that's what I mean when I say that, well, the will... yeah, I mean, on this level, I grant you the will is not free. I mean, that's the other thing. We have lots of scenarios where we do have free will and others where we don't. In the case of addiction, we have less free will. I mean, I could probably go 3 days without smoking, but after that, it really does start to drive me insane. I get that it's bad for me. I get that it's an expensive and ridiculous habit which does basically nothing for you. I mean, if you don't have a cigarette for a little while, it will get you slightly high when you have one, but that's its only minor benefit. And sometimes it can be enjoyable as well, from a personal level, and I stick up for cigarette smoking on that level. It is something to do with your hands. It's enjoyable. But yeah, it is an example, I'd say, of a condition in life within which, on a certain level, you lack degrees of freedom which you'd otherwise have if you were a non-smoker, if you see what I mean. You'd have the freedom to not choose to spend money on nicotine and not chew or tobacco, and you'd have more money, and you'd also probably have more time as well, and you'd have better health if you were to choose to stop smoking. However, I can decide on action, and I decide to give up smoking all the time. Or a lot of the time, and it's failed. But I would have said still, in addition to nicotine addiction, I do have a degree of influence over that addiction, and I can still restrain my impulses for a degree of time before the cravings become too much and I just light up a cigarette. So, I don't know, the will can still fight back against it. And lots of people successfully give up smoking. We have examples of that. So, that's an example of employing the will as a force against smoking. I think, and there's also arguments for people who lack mental capacity and say they committed crime. We say they're not guilty of that crime by dint of their lack of mental capacity. So, or because they're suffering from some form of psychiatric disorder. So, that would be another case in which we consider the freedom of will to be lacking in given people in given scenarios. That would be, I suppose, the counter example of that would be someone who commits a premeditated murder. So that's an example where the will is acting freely. So we consider that to be a far more, guilt is ascribed in that situation, hence it carries a huge prison sentence. But so it's that process of premeditation rather than it being a crime of passion also that determines that the will had greater degrees of freedom in this scenario, hence it carries a higher sentence usually. So yes, we cater for this in real life, and when it comes to the weight of evidence to support the existence of the freedom of will in the compatibilist sense that I'm describing, I would say that we have lots of evidence in real life of scenarios in which the will is free to quite a great extent, not to an absolute extent, I wouldn't have said, except possibly on the cognitive level. And I think it is a bit removed from this notion of living in a deterministic world anyway, for various other reasons. I might try and get into, but it's already 13 minutes. I don't know. Yeah. You can't, how do you evidence the point that the will is not free? And I know you get these arguments from neuroscience and so on, but I know also that those have been debunked recently, because I read an article in The Atlantic, which I'll post in the description, to the debunking of this neuroscience argument. And it's this whole thing that the neurological processes that underlie decision-making begin a few fractions of a second or something before we become consciously aware of them. And yeah, I do, to some extent, feel that that's a correct thing to have said, but still, it doesn't make us not consciously aware of those processes. And we do have, I think, conflicting desires and a huge array of things often in our heads that we'd like to take action upon, but have to choose between them ultimately. So it doesn't mean that we lack executive functioning. It doesn't mean that we, again, lack mental capacity entirely. There are people, and I've had first-hand experience of this myself, whose mental capacity seems to be impaired to a great extent, or to some extent. And those are people suffering from psychiatric disorders. So, or in all sorts of other bizarre and interesting and beautiful ways often I've encountered with these people. They're trapped in a very exotic and very bizarre world. And also when it comes to people in real life, not in a psychiatric hospital setting, say, you encounter also loads of people who are encapsulated within worldviews that are rather bizarre and esoteric, let's say, in nature. And ordinarily we'd be saying that such people suffer from delusions, which is, a common symptom of an underlying psychosis or psychiatric disorder of some description. But then again, we have people who believe all sorts of weird and wonderful things, such as, the royal family and so on are reptiles or whatever, and all that sort of stuff. Conspiracy theorists and, people like that. A lot of them, well, could be said to be suffering from delusions. I don't know. It depends on the extent of it, but never mind. Freedom of will. Yeah, okay, so that came out of a neuroscience thing. Have I said quite enough on it? Don't know. I'd like to debate Alex, actually. I like his videos a lot. I don't agree with him on everything, though. I also didn't agree with him on the veganism debate, but, I mean, maybe he'd be willing. Maybe he'd be up for it or something. I could promote my channel or my my writing. Cigarette number 2. Yeah, I smoke constantly all day, every day. It's horrible. Well, not constantly, but a lot. I'm a very heavy smoker. Yeah. So ordinarily with people in everyday life, I feel that we don't lack this locus of control within us. These executive functionings which decide on different alternatives to take in life. At the moment, I'm deciding between different alternatives to take in this conversation. I'm trying to figure out how to best articulate my thoughts in language. So, yeah, it is a constant process of decision making. I've got a sort of dictionary in my head of and thesaurus of different terms that I'm going through, trying to find the best terms in which to relate my argument. So, it's sort of like that. And when you're in an ice cream parlor or milkshake place, shake away, you are choosing between, a range of different alternatives, and you have a relatively speaking quite free choice, I think. You also have the choice to walk out of the shop and you don't have a gun to your head. So you are making a free decision. Also, if you have a gun to your head and you're told to choose a flavour out of the hundreds of flavours in Shake Away, then you're still actually making a relatively free choice. Just your degree of freedom not to choose at all is limited. So it's not so cut and dry, I feel, as the hard determinist perspective on free will. But yeah, it'd be interesting to have a debate with him if he's up for it. I'm a pantheist. I'm an anti-theistic pantheist, but I mean, yeah, I believe in the Spinozan God. And I'll try and, maybe elaborate on that and reconsider atheism, possibly. Possibly. I do have the anti-theistic element as well, and the free-thinking element too. So, yeah, it's a little bit different. Okay, this has gone on for 20 minutes now. I think this is enough. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and bye bye bye. And Alex, if you're watching this, yeah, I would be up for a debate with you on any subject, possibly veganism. So yeah, thank you very much. Bye bye.